The sound of scrubbing bristles against worn wooden planks had become the rhythm of Penelope Patterson's life, a cruel symphony that played from dawn until her fingers bled and her back screamed for mercy. She kept her head down in the Silver Spur saloon, hoping no one would look too closely at the girl on her hands and knees, because if they did, they might recognize the face that once graced the finest parlors in northern Arizona, the daughter of timber magnate Theodore Patterson, now reduced to earning pennies in a dusty saloon in Seligman, Arizona in the year 1884. Owen Zephyr pushed through the swinging doors of the Silver Spur with dust coating his denim pants and leather vest, his eyes adjusting to the dim interior after 3 weeks on the trail driving cattle from Texas to California. He needed a drink, a hot meal, and maybe a bath, in that precise order. But when his gaze swept across the saloon floor, his boot caught on the threshold and he nearly stumbled. There, on her hands and knees with a scrub brush and a bucket of murky water, was a face he had not seen in 4 years. A face he had thought about every single day since, Penelope Patterson. The girl who had laughed at his jokes when he worked as a ranch hand on her father's timber operation. The girl who had snuck away from fancy dinners to meet him by the creek, where they talked about everything and nothing until the stars came out. The girl whose father had discovered them together one evening and had Owen beaten within an inch of his life before throwing him off the property with a warning never to return. Owen stood frozen, watching as Penelope scrubbed at a stubborn stain, her once lustrous chestnut hair now tied back in a frayed ribbon, her hands red and raw, her simple cotton dress patched in several places. She was thinner than he remembered, her cheekbones more pronounced, but she was still the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "You planning on standing there all day, Cowboy, or you going to move so paying customers can get through?" The bartender's gruff voice snapped Owen back to reality. He moved to the bar, never taking his eyes off Penelope. "Whiskey," he said quietly. The bartender poured a generous measure. "That will be 2 bits." Owen paid, then asked as casually as he could manage, "The girl scrubbing floors, what is her name?" The bartender followed his gaze and shrugged. "Penny, just Penny. Showed up here about 3 months ago, half-starved and desperate for work. Martha, the owner, took pity on her. Works harder than anyone I have ever seen, but she is quiet, never talks about where she came from. Penny, not Penelope, she was hiding." Owen sipped his whiskey, his mind racing. What had happened? Theodore Patterson had been one of the wealthiest men in the territory. His timber empire stretched across thousands of acres, supplying lumber to mining operations and railroad companies throughout Arizona and New Mexico. He had been building a mansion in Flagstaff that was supposed to rival anything in San Francisco. How had his daughter ended up scrubbing floors in a saloon? Penelope moved to a different section of the floor, her brush moving in steady, mechanical strokes. She had not looked up once since Owen entered. He wondered if she was always this focused on her work, or if she had learned to make herself invisible, to avoid the attention that a pretty girl inevitably attracted in a place like this. Owen downed the rest of his whiskey and approached her slowly. He crouched down a few feet away, keeping his voice low. "Penelope." Her hand froze mid-stroke. For a long moment she did not move, did not breathe. Then, slowly, she raised her head and looked at him. Her eyes, those warm brown eyes he remembered, widened in shock and fear. "Do not," she whispered urgently. "Do not call me that. Do not say that name. What happened to you?" Owen's voice was rough with emotion. "Where is your father, your family?" Penelope glanced around nervously, then went back to scrubbing with renewed vigor. "I do not know you, mister. Please leave me alone." "Penelope, it is me. Owen Zephyr. Remember, 4 years ago, your father's timber operation near Flagstaff. We used to meet by Willow Creek." I said I do not know you. Her voice trembled slightly, betraying her words. Owen reached out and gently touched her hand, stopping the frantic scrubbing. The moment his fingers made contact with her work-roughened skin, he felt her entire body go rigid. "Please," he said softly, "tell me what happened." A single tear rolled down her cheek, cutting a clean path through the grime on her face. "He is dead," she whispered. "My father is dead, my mother too, everything is gone." Owen felt as though he had been punched in the gut. "What? How? Get back to work, Penny." A hard-faced woman in a gaudy purple dress emerged from a back room. This had to be Martha, the owner. "I do not pay you to chat with customers." Penelope immediately jerked her hand away from Owen's and resumed scrubbing. Owen stood and faced Martha. "I would like to speak with her." "I am willing to pay for her time." Martha's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "This is a saloon, Cowboy, not a brothel. The girl just cleans floors." "I know that. I just want to talk. I am an old friend of her family." Martha looked between Owen and Penelope, calculation evident in her expression. "Her shift ends at midnight. If she wants to talk to you on her own time, that is her business. But it will cost you if you want privacy. I have a back room you can rent for $5. $3, Owen countered. $4, and I will throw in a bottle of decent whiskey. Owen pulled out the coins. Deal. The next 4 hours were the longest of Owen's life. He sat at a corner table, nursing another whiskey and a plate of stew, watching Penelope work. She scrubbed the entire floor, then wiped down tables, then helped the bartender wash glasses. She moved with quiet efficiency, and Owen noticed how the other patrons treated her. Most ignored her completely. A few made crude comments that made his blood boil, but Penelope showed no reaction, as if she had learned to let the words wash over her without touching her. Around 11 o'clock, a drunk miner grabbed her wrist as she passed his table. "Hey, pretty Penny, come sit on my lap." Penelope tried to pull away. "Please, sir, I need to work." The miner yanked her closer. "I said sit down, girl." Owen was on his feet before he realized he had moved. He crossed the room in 3 strides and gripped the miner's shoulder hard enough to make the man yelp. "Let her go." The miner released Penelope and stumbled to his feet, swaying. He was shorter than Owen but built like a barrel, with arms thick from years of swinging a pickaxe. "This is none of your business, Cowboy. I am making it my business." The entire saloon had gone quiet, all eyes on them. The miner looked around at his friends, who were grinning and encouraging him. Emboldened by their support and the whiskey in his veins, he took a wild swing at Owen. Owen ducked easily and drove his fist into the miner's stomach. The man folded with a whoosh of expelled air and dropped to his knees. His friends started to rise, but the bartender cocked a shotgun and laid it on the bar with a heavy thunk. "Any man who starts a fight in here will answer to me," the bartender announced. "And I do not miss at this range." The miners grumbled but settled back down. Owen helped the wheezing man back to his chair, then turned to find Penelope staring at him with a mixture of gratitude and fear. "Thank you," she whispered. "Nobody touches you while I am here," Owen said firmly. Martha appeared at his elbow. "Well, that was exciting. The back room is ready whenever you two are." Penelope looked at Owen with uncertainty. "I do not understand. What is this about?" "I just want to talk," Owen said gently. "I want to know what happened, and I want to help if I can." "I do not need charity." "It is not charity. It is what you do for someone you care about." Something flickered in Penelope's eyes. Memory, perhaps, or pain. She glanced at Martha, who nodded permission, then at the clock on the wall. "My shift is not quite over." "I can wait," Owen assured her. At midnight, Penelope hung up her apron and washed her hands in a basin near the bar. Owen noticed how carefully she dried each finger, wincing as she touched certain spots where blisters had formed. Then she followed Martha to a small back room that contained a table, 2 chairs, and a lamp. Martha set down the promised bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. "You have until 2 o'clock," Martha said. "After that, I need the room." When the door closed, leaving them alone for the first time in 4 years, Penelope sank into one of the chairs as if her legs could no longer support her. Owen poured whiskey into both glasses and pushed one toward her. "I do not drink," she said quietly. "Tonight you might want to make an exception." She looked at the amber liquid for a long moment, then picked up the glass and took a small sip. She coughed as it burned down her throat, but then took another sip. "I should not be here alone with you. If anyone knew, if anyone recognized me, it would be worse. Worse than scrubbing floors for Pennies. Yes." Her voice was flat and certain. Owen sat across from her, studying her face in the lamplight. She was 22 now, he calculated, the same age he was. But she looked older, worn down by whatever had happened to her. "Tell me," he said softly. "Tell me what happened to your family, to you." Penelope took another sip of whiskey, then set the glass down with trembling hands. "My father made a mistake," she began. "A terrible mistake. 2 years ago, he made a deal with some investors from back east. They wanted to expand the timber operation, cut deeper into the forest. My father borrowed heavily against everything he owned to finance the expansion. He was so certain it would work, so certain he could not fail." She paused, her eyes distant with painful memory. "But there was a fire. July of 1882. It started in one of the lumber camps and spread faster than anyone could have imagined. By the time it was contained, thousands of acres were destroyed. All of the new equipment, the lumber, the camps, everything. And the investors wanted their money back. They gave my father 30 days to repay the loans in full, knowing he could not possibly do it. They set him up," Owen said, anger building in his chest. "They wanted to take everything." "Yes. When my father could not pay, they seized everything. The lumber operation, our home, even our personal belongings. My father tried to fight them in court, but they had lawyers from back east, men who knew every trick and loophole. We lost everything within 6 months." "What happened to your father?" Penelope's face crumpled. "He could not bear it. The shame, the loss, seeing my mother and me reduced to poverty. He started drinking heavily. And then one night, about 1.5 years ago, he took his hunting rifle and walked into the woods. They found him 3 days later." Owen reached across the table and took her hand. This time she did not pull away. "I am so sorry. My mother tried to hold on after that. We moved to Prescott, took in laundry and sewing. But she had always been delicate, and the work, the poverty, the grief, it was too much for her. She caught pneumonia last winter and died in February. I had nothing left. No family, no money, no prospects. I heard that Seligman was growing, that there might be work here, so I used the last of my money to buy a stage coach ticket. Martha gave me a job when no one else would." "Why did you not write to me?" Owen asked. "I would have come. I would have helped." Penelope finally met his eyes fully, and he saw such pain there that it took his breath away. "How could I? I did not even know where you were. And what could you have done? You had nothing 4 years ago. My father made sure of that when he had you beaten and thrown out. I could not burden you with my problems. You were never a burden." Owen squeezed her hand gently. "You were all I thought about. For 4 years I have worked and saved every penny. I bought cattle, built up a small herd. I have been driving them to California to sell because the prices are better there. I have a little money now, not much, but enough to start something. A ranch, maybe, or a small business." "Why?" Penelope whispered. "Why did you work so hard?" "Because I was going to come back for you. I was going to prove to your father that I was good enough for you, that I could provide for you. I was going to ask you to marry me." Tears streamed down Penelope's face now, unchecked. "You should have forgotten about me. I am not that girl anymore. I am nobody now. Just Penny, the girl who scrubs floors. Owen stood and moved around the table, kneeling beside her chair. He took both of her hands in his. You are Penelope Patterson, the smartest, kindest, most beautiful woman I have ever known. You are the girl who taught me to read better because she spent hours patiently helping me with difficult words. You are the woman who looked past the dirt and sweat of a ranch hand and saw someone worth talking to. You are not nobody. You are everything. Owen. His name came out as a sob. He pulled her into his arms and she collapsed against him, weeping into his shoulder. He held her as 4 years of pain and loss and fear poured out of her. He stroked her hair and whispered soothing words, and vowed silently that he would never let anyone hurt her again. When her tears finally subsided, she pulled back and looked at him with red, swollen eyes. What do we do now? You come with me, Owen said firmly. I have money from selling my cattle in California, enough to get us both to San Diego maybe, or back to Texas where I have connections. We can start over somewhere new, somewhere nobody knows your story. I cannot just leave. I owe Martha for giving me work when I had nothing. I will pay her whatever you owe, and I will pay her for the trouble of finding someone new. Penelope shook her head slowly. It is not that simple. There are things you do not know. A cold feeling settled in Owen's stomach. What things? The investors who destroyed my father, they did not just want his land and business. They wanted revenge for something. I never knew what. But they made it clear that I was not to speak to anyone about what happened. They said if I tried to tell our story, if I tried to ruin their reputation or seek justice, they would make sure I was ruined completely. That is why I changed my name, why I came here, why I try to be invisible. Who were these investors? The company was called Western Timber Consolidated. But the man behind it, the one who orchestrated everything, was named Marcus Thornton. He is from Boston, very wealthy, very connected. My father said he was ruthless in business. Owen felt rage building in his chest, hot and fierce. This Marcus Thornton, where is he now? I do not know. Flagstaff maybe, or Prescott. He took over my father's entire operation, so I assume he is still running it. Good. Owen's voice was hard. Then I know where to find him. Penelope gripped his arms urgently. No, you cannot go after him. He has money and power. He will destroy you just like he destroyed my father. Maybe, but I am not your father. I am not a businessman trying to fight him in court. I am just a cowboy, and cowboys solve problems differently. Please, Owen, I could not bear it if something happened to you. Just let it go. We can leave, start over, and forget any of this ever happened. Owen looked at her for a long moment, seeing the fear and pleading in her eyes. Part of him wanted to agree, to take her and run as far and as fast as they could. But another part, the part that had driven him for 4 years, the part that had turned a beaten ranch hand into a man with his own cattle and money in his pocket, that part could not let it go. I will not do anything reckless, he promised, but I need to understand what happened. I need to know if there is a way to get back what was taken from you. There is not. It is gone, all of it. Maybe, but I need to be sure. Penelope studied his face and seemed to recognize that he would not be swayed. She nodded slowly. Then I am coming with you. If you are going to be foolish, I should be there to try to stop you from getting killed. A knock on the door interrupted them. Martha's voice called through the wood, "Time is up." Owen stood and helped Penelope to her feet. "Where do you stay?" "There is a boarding house 2 streets over. I have a room there. It is not much, but it is clean." "Pack whatever you need. We leave at first light." "To go where?" "Flagstaff." To find Marcus Thornton and get some answers. They emerged from the back room to find the saloon mostly empty. Martha was wiping down the bar and the bartender was stacking chairs on tables. Martha looked at them with a knowing expression. "Penny, you leaving me?" she asked directly. Penelope hesitated, then nodded. "I am sorry, Martha. You have been kind to me, but I need to go." "With him?" Martha jerked her chin at Owen. "Yes," Martha snorted. "Well, cannot say I am surprised. Anyone could see the way he looked at you. That is not the look of a man who just wants to talk." She waved a hand. "Go on, then. You owe me for this week's room and board, but I will let it slide. You worked harder than 3 girls combined. Just do not come crawling back if it does not work out." "Thank you," Penelope said sincerely. Owen escorted Penelope to her boarding house, a shabby building that leaned slightly to one side. Her room was on the 2nd floor, a space barely large enough for a narrow bed and a small dresser. She owned almost nothing: 2 other dresses, equally worn, some undergarments, a hairbrush, and a small leather journal. "That was my mother's," she said when Owen looked at the journal. "The only thing I managed to keep from our old life." "Bring it," Owen said. "Bring everything that matters to you." While Penelope packed her meager belongings into a small carpet bag, Owen made arrangements. He had a room at another boarding house, better than Penelope's but not by much. He collected his own belongings, including his rifle, his spare clothes, and the leather pouch that contained his money. Then he went to the livery stable and arranged to buy a horse and saddle for Penelope, along with supplies for the journey to Flagstaff. It cost him more than he wanted to spend, but he had enough left over to keep them going for several months if they were careful. He led both horses, his reliable gelding Thunder and a gentle mare he selected for Penelope, back to her boarding house just as dawn was breaking over the Arizona desert. Penelope was waiting outside, her carpetbag clutched in both hands. She looked exhausted, as though she had not slept at all, but there was also something new in her expression. Hope, perhaps, or determination. "This is for you," Owen said, gesturing to the mare. "Her name is Daisy, at least according to the stable owner. She is gentle and sure-footed." "I have not ridden in almost 2 years," Penelope admitted. "It will come back to you." Owen helped her mount, his hands steadying her waist as she settled into the saddle. Even through the layers of her worn dress, he could feel how thin she had become. "When did you last have a real meal?" "I eat," she said defensively. "That is not what I asked," she sighed. "Food costs money. I have been saving everything I can." "For what?" "I do not know." "The future, I suppose, in case something happened and I needed to leave quickly." Owen shook his head and pulled himself onto Thunder. "From now on, you eat properly. You cannot get your strength back on empty promises." They stopped at the general store before leaving town. Owen bought bread, cheese, dried meat, coffee, and other supplies. He also bought Penelope a new dress, a simple blue cotton that was not fancy but was clean and whole, along with a warm shawl for cool evenings and a proper hat to keep the sun off her face. "This is too much," Penelope protested. "This is necessary," Owen countered. "You cannot ride for days in a dress that is falling apart." The journey from Seligman to Flagstaff would take several days, following the trail northeast through the high desert and into the ponderosa pine forests. It was late October and the days were still warm, but the nights were beginning to turn cold. They rode at a steady pace, not pushing the horses but not dawdling either. As they traveled, Owen and Penelope talked. At first, the conversation was tentative, both of them navigating around painful subjects. But gradually, they began to relax, to remember the easy companionship they had shared 4 years ago. Owen told her about his time in Texas, working various ranches and slowly building his herd. He told her about the trail drives, the hard work, the dangerous river crossings, the nights sleeping under the stars. Penelope told him about her mother's decline, the way grief had eaten away at her until there was nothing left. She told him about the small acts of kindness from strangers that had kept her going when she wanted to give up. She told him about the journal, how she wrote in it every night, documenting her thoughts and fears because there was no one else to share them with. On the second night, they made camp near a small creek. Owen built a fire and cooked a simple meal of beans and bacon while Penelope changed into her new dress behind a screen of bushes. When she emerged, Owen felt his breath catch. Even travel-worn and exhausted, she was beautiful. The blue dress brought out the warmth in her brown eyes, and without the grime of the saloon, her skin had a healthy glow in the firelight. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Nothing," Owen said quickly. "Just remembering how you looked at those fancy dinners your mother used to host. You would wear silk dresses that probably cost more than I earned in a year." Penelope sat down on a log near the fire. "I hated those dinners, all those people pretending to be friends while they measured our wealth and schemed to take what we had. At least when I met you by the creek, I knew you wanted nothing from me except my company." "I wanted more than that," Owen admitted. "I wanted everything, but I knew I could not have it, not then. And now," Owen met her eyes across the fire, "now I am not sure what is possible. But I know I am not walking away from you again, not unless you tell me to go." Penelope was quiet for a long moment, her gaze fixed on the dancing flames. "4 years ago, I was a foolish girl who thought love conquered all. I snuck away to meet you because it felt romantic and exciting. I thought my father would eventually accept us because in the stories I read, the parents always came around in the end. But that is not what happened. He hurt you badly. I saw the bruises, the blood. It taught me that love does not conquer anything. It just makes you vulnerable." "You are wrong," Owen said firmly. "Love does not conquer all, but it gives you a reason to fight. These past 4 years, the reason I kept going when things were hard, when I was sleeping in the dirt and eating nothing but hardtack, was because I loved you. That love made me stronger, not weaker. But I am not the girl you loved. That girl died along with her parents and her old life." Owen moved around the fire and crouched in front of her. He took her work-roughened hands in his. "You are exactly the girl I loved. You are just carrying more scars now, but scars prove you survived. They prove you are strong." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I am not strong. I am terrified. Terrified of hoping for something better because every time I have hope it gets ripped away. I cannot go through that again." "Then do not hope," Owen said. "Just trust me. Can you do that?" Penelope looked at him for a long time, searching his face for something. Whatever she found there must have satisfied her because she finally nodded. "I will try." They reached Flagstaff on the afternoon of the 4th day. The town had grown since Owen had last seen it, with new buildings lining the main street and the railroad depot bustling with activity. The timber industry that had made Theodore Patterson wealthy was still thriving, evident in the lumber mills on the outskirts of town, and the freight wagons loaded with fresh cut logs. Owen found them a hotel, a decent establishment that was respectable enough that Penelope would not be uncomfortable, but not so expensive that it would drain his resources. He got 2 rooms next to each other, conscious of propriety even though part of him wanted to keep her close where he could protect her. After they cleaned up and ate a proper meal in the hotel dining room, Owen asked the clerk where he could find Marcus Thornton. "Western Timber Consolidated." The clerk said, "Their main office is 3 blocks south, big brick building with their name on a sign. You cannot miss it. But Mr. Thornton is not usually there. He has an estate about 5 miles north of town. They say it is the finest house in the territory." Owen felt Penelope tense beside him. "Is that my family's land?" "I do not know, madam. I am not from around here originally." Outside the hotel, Penelope stopped and gripped Owen's arm. "That is our land. My father was building that mansion. Thornton just moved in and took it for himself. Then let us go see it, Owen said grimly. Now, just ride up to his house. Why not? We are not criminals. We have nothing to hide. They retrieved their horses and rode north out of town, following the directions from a helpful shopkeeper. The road climbed gradually into the ponderosa pines, and the air was crisp with the scent of pine needles and wood smoke. After about an hour they crested a rise and saw it. The mansion was indeed magnificent. 3 stories of white stone and timber, with wide verandas and tall windows that caught the afternoon sun. Formal gardens surrounded it, and beyond the house, Owen could see a complex of barns, outbuildings, and what looked like administrative offices for the timber operation. Penelope made a small, choked sound beside him. My mother designed those gardens. She spent months planning where every flower would go. We do not have to do this, Owen said gently. We can turn around right now. No, Penelope straightened in her saddle. I need to see him. I need to look him in the eye and understand why he destroyed my family. They rode up the long drive to the front entrance. Before they reached the door, 2 men emerged from one of the outbuildings. They were rough-looking characters, not the typical household staff. Hired guns, Owen realized. This is private property, one of them called out. State your business. We are here to see Marcus Thornton, Owen replied evenly. Mr. Thornton does not see anyone without an appointment. Then we will make an appointment. When can he see us? The men looked at each other and laughed. Mr. Thornton does not meet with drifters and trail trash. Now turn around and get off this property before we make you leave. Owen felt his temper rising, but before he could respond, the front door of the mansion opened and a woman stepped out. She was in her 40s, handsome rather than beautiful, with dark hair streaked with gray and intelligent eyes. She wore an expensive green dress that spoke of Eastern fashions. What is happening here? She asked in a cultured voice. Just some vagrants, Mrs. Thornton, one of the hired men said. We are sending them away. But the woman's eyes had fixed on Penelope and her expression shifted to something between surprise and concern. You, she said softly, you are Theodore Patterson's daughter. Penelope lifted her chin. I am. I thought you were dead. We heard you died with your mother last winter. Who told you that? Your father's former business associates. They said the whole family was gone. Mrs. Thornton descended the steps, studying Penelope closely. You look terrible. What has happened to you? What has happened to me? Penelope's voice rose with anger. Your husband destroyed my family. He took everything we had through lies and manipulation. My father killed himself out of despair. My mother died from a broken heart and pneumonia. I have been scrubbing floors in a saloon for pennies to survive. That is what has happened to me. Mrs. Thornton's face paled. I think you had better come inside, both of you. The hired men started to protest, but she silenced them with a sharp look. They are guests. Anyone who interferes with them will answer to me. She led Owen and Penelope into the mansion, through a grand entrance hall that Penelope recognized with painful clarity, and into a well-appointed sitting room. Mrs. Thornton closed the door firmly and turned to face them. My name is Vivien Thornton, she said. And I think there has been a terrible misunderstanding. There is no misunderstanding, Penelope said coldly. Your husband set up my father to fail, then stole everything when he could not repay impossible debts. That is not what my husband told me. Vivien moved to a sideboard and poured 3 glasses of sherry with shaking hands. She offered them to Owen and Penelope, then took a long sip of her own. Marcus told me that Theodore Patterson was a poor businessman who overextended himself and defaulted on legitimate loans. He said he had no choice but to seize the assets to protect the other investors. That is a lie, Penelope said flatly. Vivien set down her glass and sank into a chair. "I am beginning to suspect you are right. There have been things over the past 2 years that did not add up." Questions Marcus would not answer, money that appeared and disappeared from our accounts, and the way he reacted when I asked about the Patterson family. She looked at Penelope. "He told me you were all dead. He made it sound like a tragedy he had nothing to do with. If you are alive and working in a saloon, then everything else he told me is probably a lie too." "Where is your husband?" Owen asked. "In Prescott. He has business there this week. He will not be back until Saturday." Owen glanced at Penelope, then back at Vivien. "Mrs. Thornton, I do not mean to be disrespectful, but why are you telling us this? We are strangers who just showed up making accusations about your husband." Vivien met his eyes steadily. "Because I am tired of living with a man who lies to me. Because I have my own money, my own inheritance from my family back in Boston, and Marcus has been using it for his business dealings without my permission. And because I lost a daughter 3 years ago to scarlet fever, and when I look at Miss Patterson, I see a girl who should not be scrubbing floors and fighting for survival while my husband lives in her family's house." She stood and paced to the window, looking out over the gardens. "I will help you, but you need to understand that Marcus is dangerous when he is cornered. He has men who will do anything he tells them to do. If you go after him directly, you will likely end up dead." "What do you suggest?" Owen asked. "Evidence. We need evidence of what he did. Proof that he defrauded Theodore Patterson. Once we have that, we can take it to the territorial governor. Marcus has made enemies in his business dealings. If we can prove he is a fraud, those enemies will help bring him down." "Where would we find this evidence?" Penelope asked. "In his office here at the estate. He keeps files on all his business dealings. I'm not allowed in there, but I know where he keeps the keys." Vivien turned back to face them. "If you are willing to take the risk, I can get you inside, but it has to be tonight while he is still in Prescott." Owen looked at Penelope. "What do you think?" "I think we did not come all this way to give up now," Penelope said firmly. They waited until after dark. Vivien sent the household staff home early, claiming she had a headache and wanted quiet. The hired guards made their rounds of the property, but Vivien knew their patterns. She led Owen and Penelope through the mansion to a locked door on the first floor. "This is his private office," she whispered. "No one is allowed in here except Marcus." She produced a key from her pocket and unlocked the door. Inside was a masculine space dominated by a large oak desk, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and filing cabinets. Owen lit a lamp while Vivien began searching through the desk drawers. "Look for anything with Theodore Patterson's name on it," she instructed. "Contracts, correspondence, financial records." They searched for nearly an hour, working quickly but carefully. Owen found several folders in one of the filing cabinets labeled with Patterson's name. Inside were contracts, loan agreements, and correspondence that told a damning story. "Look at this," Owen said, spreading papers across the desk. "This letter is from Marcus Thornton to an associate in Boston. It is dated 6 months before the fire. He is discussing how to create circumstances that would force Patterson into bankruptcy." Penelope read over his shoulder, her hands clenching the edge of the desk. "He planned the whole thing. The fire was not an accident." "There is more," Vivien said, pulling out another folder. "These are financial records showing that Marcus used my money, my inheritance, to fund the initial investments in Patterson's company. Then, when it all collapsed, he used the seized assets to pay himself back, with interest. He essentially stole from me to destroy your father." They gathered all the relevant documents, making sure they had a complete picture of Marcus Thornton's fraud. Owen was just closing the last filing cabinet when they heard voices outside. "He is back early," Vivien said, her face going white. "You need to hide." "No," Owen said. "We have what we came for. Now we face him." "He will kill you," Vivien hissed. "Maybe. But I am tired of running, and I think Penelope is too." Penelope nodded, moving to stand beside Owen. "She is right. We face him now." The office door burst open, and Marcus Thornton strode in, followed by two of his hired men. He was a tall man in his 50s, with silver hair and cold blue eyes. He wore an expensive suit and carried himself with the arrogant confidence of someone who had never faced real consequences for his actions. He stopped short when he saw them, his eyes widening in surprise. "Vivien, what is going on here? Who are these people?" "That is Penelope Patterson," Vivien said quietly. "Theodore's daughter, the one you told me was dead." Marcus's expression flickered through several emotions before settling on cold calculation. "I do not know what she has told you, but the girl is obviously lying. The entire Patterson family died over a year ago." "Then who am I?" Penelope asked, stepping forward. "Who is this girl standing in front of you? A ghost? A con artist trying to claim a dead woman's identity," Marcus said smoothly. He turned to his hired men. "Remove these people from my property." "Not before we turn these over to the authorities," Owen said, holding up the folders. "We have proof of everything you did. The fraud, the arson, the theft, all of it." Marcus's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Give me those documents, now." "No." Marcus nodded to his men, who drew their pistols. "I said give them to me." Owen's hand moved to his own gun, but he was outnumbered and outdrawn. For a moment, the room balanced on a knife edge. Then Vivien stepped between Owen and the hired guns. "Shoot them, and you will have to shoot me too," she said to her husband. "Is that what you want, to murder your wife in front of witnesses? Vivien, do not be foolish. Move aside." "No. I have spent 3 years ignoring my doubts about you, telling myself that you were just ambitious, just driven. But this is not ambition. This is cruelty. You destroyed an entire family for profit. You lied to me, stole from me, and now you would commit murder to cover your tracks." "Everything I did was for us," Marcus said, his voice rising. "To build an empire, to give us the life we deserve. You used my money without my permission. You built that empire on my inheritance and other people's suffering." Vivien's voice was steady now, certain. "I want a divorce. And I want you out of this house. This land belonged to Theodore Patterson. It should go to his daughter." Marcus laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "You think the law will side with you? I have the best lawyers money can buy. That girl is nobody, a liar and a whore who has been working in a saloon. Who do you think the courts will believe?" Penelope flinched at his words, but Owen moved to stand beside her, his presence solid and reassuring. "Actually," a new voice said from the doorway, "I think the courts will believe the territorial governor." Everyone turned to see a distinguished-looking man in his 60s enter the office, flanked by 2 U.S. Marshals. He looked at Marcus Thornton with cold disdain. "Governor Triddle," Marcus said, the color draining from his face. "What are you doing here? Mrs. Thornton sent word to my office this afternoon," Governor Frederick Triddle said. "She indicated there might be evidence of fraud and possibly murder connected to the Patterson case. The marshals and I arrived in Flagstaff this evening, and Mrs. Thornton was kind enough to invite us to witness this confrontation." Vivien met Owen's eyes and gave a small nod. She had planned this, setting a trap for her own husband. Governor Triddle held out his hand to Owen. "I will take those documents, son. And then these marshals are going to place Marcus Thornton under arrest for fraud, arson, theft, and conspiracy to commit murder." The hired men holstered their guns and stepped back, smart enough to know when they were beaten. The marshals moved forward and took Marcus into custody. He did not go quietly, shouting about injustice and false accusations, but no one was listening. When they had taken him away, Governor Triddle turned to Penelope. "Miss Patterson, I knew your father. He was a good man who did not deserve what happened to him. I apologize that the territory failed to protect him and your family. We will do better by you." Penelope was trembling, overwhelmed by the sudden reversal of fortune. "What happens now? Now we sort through this mess. The assets that were fraudulently seized will need to be reviewed. Some may be returned to you, though I cannot promise everything. Marcus Thornton made many deals and moved money through multiple accounts. It will take time to untangle it all." "I do not care about the money," Penelope said quietly. "I just want justice for my father. You will have it, I promise you that." After the governor and marshals left, Vivien poured them all generous glasses of whiskey. "I am sorry I could not warn you about the governor," she said to Owen. "But I needed Marcus to feel confident to incriminate himself." "You took a risk," Owen said. "Those hired guns could have shot us before the marshals arrived." "I know, but I could not let this continue, and I knew from the moment I saw Miss Patterson that everything Marcus told me was a lie." She turned to Penelope. "This house, this land, it should be yours. I will make sure you get it back." "I do not want it," Penelope said. "It holds too many painful memories. If you want to live here, please do, or sell it. I do not care, I just want to be free of all of this." "Then take the money from the sale," Vivien insisted. "It will give you a fresh start, a chance to build a new life. You have earned that much." Over the following weeks, the legal machinery ground forward. Marcus Thornton's crimes were laid bare in court. He had indeed orchestrated the fire that destroyed Theodore Patterson's timber camps. He had manipulated loan terms and called in debts early, knowing Patterson could not pay. He had stolen from his own wife to finance the scheme. The evidence was overwhelming. Marcus was sentenced to 15 years in territorial prison. His assets were seized and liquidated. After paying back the legitimate creditors and investors, there was a substantial amount left over. Following Vivien's testimony about how Marcus had used her money without permission, the court ruled that those funds should be returned to her. And following Governor Triddle's personal advocacy, a significant portion of the remaining assets were granted to Penelope as restitution for the harm done to her family. It was not everything her father had lost, but it was enough, more than enough. During those weeks of legal proceedings, Owen and Penelope stayed in Flagstaff. They rented a small house on the outskirts of town, and slowly, carefully, they rebuilt their relationship. There was no rush now, no immediate danger forcing them together. Instead, they had time to talk, to heal, to remember who they had been and discover who they had become. One evening in late November, as the first snow of winter began to fall, Owen found Penelope sitting on the porch of their rented house, wrapped in a blanket and staring out at the ponderosa pines. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, settling beside her. "Everything. Nothing." How strange it is that life can change so completely in such a short time. 2 months ago, I was scrubbing floors and convinced I would die poor and alone. Now I have more money than I know what to do with, and you are here beside me. It does not feel real." "It is real," Owen assured her. "And you deserve all of it. The question is, what do you want to do now?" Penelope turned to look at him. "What do you want to do? I asked you first." She smiled, the first genuine smile he had seen from her in weeks. "I want to leave Arizona, not forever maybe, but for a while. I want to see places I have never been. Texas, maybe, or California. I want to build something new that has nothing to do with timber or my father's legacy. And I want to do it with you, if you will have me." Owen took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "I have wanted you since I was 18 years old. I will always want you. but I need to know you are sure. I am not a rich man. I have some money saved and a good reputation as a cattleman, but I cannot offer you mansions or servants or fancy dresses." "I do not want those things anymore," Penelope said firmly. "They did not make my parents happy. They did not protect us from men like Marcus Thornton. I want a simple life with an honest man. I want a partner, not a provider. And I want love, real love, not the performance of it." "Then marry me," Owen said. "Not because you need rescuing or because I feel obligated. Marry me because we choose each other, freely and completely." Penelope's eyes filled with tears, but they were happy tears this time. "Yes, yes, I will marry you." They were married in a small church in Flagstaff on December 15th, 1884. Vivien Thornton stood as Penelope's witness, having become an unlikely friend during the weeks of legal proceedings. A ranch foreman Owen had worked with in Texas stood as his witness. Governor Triddle attended the ceremony, giving his blessing to the union. Penelope wore a simple white dress that Vivien had helped her choose, nothing like the elaborate gown she had worn in her former life, but perfect for the woman she had become. Owen wore his best suit, and when he saw Penelope walking down the aisle toward him, he felt his heart might burst from the sheer joy of it. The ceremony was brief, the words simple but profound. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Owen kissed Penelope with all the pent-up longing of 4 years apart and weeks of careful courtship. The small congregation applauded, and for the first time since her father's death, Penelope felt truly happy. They spent their wedding night in the hotel where they had first stayed in Flagstaff, but this time in the finest room, a gift from Vivien. Owen was gentle and patient, understanding that this was new for Penelope, that despite everything she had survived, she was still vulnerable in this way. They took their time discovering each other, and when they finally came together, it felt right and perfect and like coming home. In the morning, wrapped in Owen's arms with snow falling softly outside the window, Penelope whispered, "Where do we go from here?" "Anywhere you want," Owen replied. "We have time, we have money, we have each other. The world is ours." "Then let us go to Texas," Penelope decided. "You said you have friends there, connections. We could buy land, start a ranch, build something that is ours together. You would be happy as a rancher's wife. It is hard work." "I scrubbed floors for Pennies. I think I can handle hard work." She propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. "Besides, I do not want to be just a rancher's wife. I want to be your partner. Teach me the business. Let me work beside you. We will build something together." Owen pulled her down for a kiss. "I love you, Penelope Zephyr." "And I love you, Owen Zephyr." They left Arizona in January of 1885 as soon as the legal matters were fully settled. The sale of the Patterson estate and the return of fraudulently seized assets had left Penelope with nearly $20,000, a fortune by any measure. Owen had another $3,000 from his cattle sales. Together, they had enough to buy substantial land and build a real life. They traveled through New Mexico and into Texas, taking their time, seeing the country. In a way, it was the honeymoon neither of them had ever expected to have. They stayed in small hotels and made love under the stars. They talked about their dreams and their fears. They learned the rhythms of each other's days and discovered that they fit together as naturally as breathing. In late February, they reached a town called Amarillo in the Texas Panhandle. The land there was perfect for cattle, miles of open range with good grass and water. Owen met with some of his old contacts from his trail driving days, and within a week, they had found a property for sale. It was 500 acres with a small house, a barn, and good grazing land. The owner was retiring and wanted a quick sale. Owen and Penelope walked the property together, Penelope's hand tucked into the crook of his arm. The wind was cold, but the sun was bright, and Penelope could see the potential in every acre. "This could be good," Owen said cautiously. "We could run a decent herd here, maybe 200 head to start. Build it up over time." "I love it," Penelope said simply. "Let us buy it." They purchased the property in both their names, a decision that raised some eyebrows among the lawyers but that both Owen and Penelope insisted upon. This was their ranch, their future, built together from the beginning. The first year was hard work. They hired 2 ranch hands to help with the cattle and the daily operations. Penelope threw herself into learning everything she could about ranching. She learned to ride like a cowgirl, not the sedate riding she had done in her youth. She learned to rope and brand and doctor sick cattle. She kept the books and managed the household finances with a shrewd eye that impressed even Owen. By the end of their first year, the ranch was thriving. They had doubled their herd and built a reputation for quality cattle and honest dealing. Owen was respected in the community, and Penelope had become friends with several of the other ranch wives, women who appreciated her lack of pretension and her willingness to work hard. On their first anniversary, Owen surprised Penelope with a gift. He had been building something in the barn, working on it in the evenings after she had gone to bed. He led her out to the barn with her eyes closed, then told her to open them. Inside was a beautiful wooden rocking chair, crafted from oak and polished to a warm glow. It was simple but elegant, the work of someone who understood both wood and love. "I made it myself," Owen said, suddenly shy. "I thought it might be useful, for the future." Penelope ran her hands over the smooth wood, tears pricking her eyes. "It is beautiful, but why do you think we will need a rocking chair?" Owen put his arms around her from behind, his hands settling on her stomach. "I was hoping maybe someday we would have a reason. A baby, perhaps." Penelope turned in his arms, her face radiant. "Then I have some very good news. We are going to need that rocking chair sooner than you think. I am pregnant, Owen. We are going to have a baby." Owen let out a whoop of joy that probably scared the horses. He picked Penelope up and spun her around, then immediately set her down carefully, afraid he might hurt her. "Are you sure?" "When? How long?" Penelope laughed at his excitement. "I am sure. The doctor in town confirmed it yesterday. The baby should come in late August or early September." "We are going to be parents," Owen said, wonder in his voice. He knelt down and pressed his ear to Penelope's stomach, even though it was far too early to hear anything. "Did you hear that, little one? Your pa is going to do everything in his power to make sure you have a good life, a happy life. You are going to be so loved." Penelope ran her fingers through Owen's hair, her heart so full she thought it might overflow. 4 years ago, she had thought her life was over. She had lost everything and everyone she loved. She had been reduced to scrubbing floors and living in fear. But somehow, through all that darkness, she had found her way to this moment, to this man, to this future. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Penelope continued to work on the ranch, though Owen fussed over her constantly and tried to make her rest more than she wanted. She felt healthy and strong, and as her belly grew, she felt a fierce love for the child growing inside her. She wrote long letters to Vivien Thornton, who had become a dear friend despite the distance between them. Vivien had indeed divorced Marcus after his conviction, and had moved back to Boston to be near her own family. But she and Penelope maintained a regular correspondence, and Vivien sent gifts for the baby, beautiful handmade blankets and tiny clothes that made Penelope weep with gratitude. In late August, as the summer heat baked the Texas plains, Penelope went into labor. Owen rode into town at breakneck speed to fetch the doctor and the midwife, then paced outside their bedroom like a caged animal while Penelope labored inside. The hours stretched into evening, and Owen was nearly out of his mind with worry when he finally heard it. The thin, wavering cry of a newborn baby. The midwife emerged, beaming. "Congratulations, Mr. Zephyr. You have a son." Owen burst into the bedroom to find Penelope propped up against pillows, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle. The baby had a shock of dark hair and was wailing with impressive lung power. "A boy," Penelope said softly. "We have a son, Owen." Owen sat carefully on the edge of the bed and looked down at his son in wonder. The baby was so small, so perfect, with tiny fingers that curled around Owen's thumb when he offered it. "He is beautiful. You are beautiful. I cannot believe this is real." "What should we name him?" Penelope asked. They had discussed names but never settled on one. Now, looking at their son, Owen said, "Theodore, after your father. He should know where he came from, who his grandfather was." Penelope's eyes filled with tears. "Theodore Owen Zephyr. It is perfect." Little Theodore, who they called Theo, was a happy baby. He had his mother's brown eyes and his father's stubborn chin. Owen was besotted from the first moment, carrying Theo around the ranch and talking to him about cattle and horses and the land as if the baby could understand every word. Penelope recovered quickly from the birth and was soon back to her ranch duties, though now with a baby on her hip more often than not. The ranch hands teased Owen mercilessly about how he would stop work to rush over whenever Theo made a sound, but it was good-natured ribbing. Everyone could see that Owen Zephyr was a man utterly devoted to his family. Over the next few years, the ranch continued to prosper. They expanded their land holdings, adding another 300 acres. Their herd grew to nearly 500 head of quality cattle. Owen hired more hands and built a bigger barn. They replaced the small house with a larger one, though nothing as grand as the mansion Penelope had grown up in. This house was comfortable and practical, with room for their growing family, because Theo did not remain an only child for long. When he was 2 years old, Penelope gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah, after Owen's mother who had passed away when he was young. Sarah had her father's blonde hair and a sunny disposition that brightened every room she entered. 2 years after Sarah came another son, James, who was quiet and thoughtful even as a baby. And 3 years after James came another daughter, Elizabeth, who had inherited both her mother's intelligence and her father's stubbornness in equal measure. The Zephyr Ranch became known throughout the Texas Panhandle as one of the finest operations in the territory. But more than that, it became known as a place of fairness and integrity. Owen and Penelope treated their ranch hands well, paying fair wages and providing good conditions. They became pillars of the Amarillo community, helping to build a church and a school. Penelope never forgot where she had come from, both the privilege of her early life and the poverty of her lowest point. She made sure that any woman who came to their door looking for work or help was given both. She hired widows and women down on their luck, giving them jobs in the household or helping them find positions in town. She donated to the church's charity fund and made sure that no child in their community went hungry if she could help it. Owen watched his wife with pride and love that only grew deeper with each passing year. This was the girl he had fallen in love with by the creek all those years ago, but she had grown into a woman of remarkable strength and compassion. She ran their household and their ranch business with equal skill, raised their children with firmness and love, and still found time to help their community. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Owen and Penelope stood on the porch of their ranch house, watching the sun set over their land. Their children were inside, being watched by the housekeeper for the evening. It was a rare moment of quiet for just the two of them. "You ever regret it?" Owen asked, his arm around Penelope's waist. Leaving Arizona, giving up your father's legacy, choosing this life. Penelope leaned into him, her head on his shoulder. Not for a single moment. This is the life I was meant to live. With you, with our children, building something good and lasting. My father's legacy is not timber or land or money. His legacy is the values he taught me before everything went wrong. Integrity, hard work, treating people fairly. Those are the things I have carried forward, and I see them in you, in our children, in this ranch we built together. I love you, Owen said, kissing the top of her head. More now than I did 10 years ago. More than I did 4 years before that, when I was just a foolish ranch hand who thought he could never have you. You always had me, Penelope replied. Even when we were apart, even when I thought I would never see you again, you had my heart. You have always had my heart. They stood together as the stars came out, the same stars that had shone over them during the hardest times and the best times. They had traveled a long, difficult road to get to this moment, but every step had been worth it. Inside the house, they could hear their children laughing at something, the sound like music. This was what mattered, not mansions or fortunes or social standing. Just love, family, and the life they had built together from nothing but determination and hope. The years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. Theo grew into a responsible young man who loved the ranch and wanted nothing more than to follow in his father's footsteps. Sarah developed a talent for training horses and became known throughout the region for her skill. James surprised everyone by showing an aptitude for numbers and business, taking over much of the ranch's financial management while still in his teens. And Elizabeth, the youngest, had her mother's fierce determination and her father's courage, a combination that suggested she would do remarkable things. When Theo turned 18, he told his parents he wanted to expand the ranch's operations, to start breeding horses as well as cattle. Owen and Penelope listened to his carefully thought-out plan and agreed to finance the venture. Within 3 years, Zephyr Ranch was known for producing some of the finest working horses in Texas. Sarah married a neighboring rancher's son when she was 21, a good man who respected her skills and treated her as an equal partner. Penelope watched her daughter walk down the aisle in a simple but lovely white dress and thought about her own wedding, about how far they had all come. James surprised everyone by deciding he wanted to study law. He left the ranch to attend university in Austin, but he came home every chance he got, and he always made it clear that his heart belonged to the land and his family. Penelope saw so much of her own father in James, the best parts of Theodore Patterson before tragedy had broken him. Elizabeth was still finding her path, but at 16, she was already talking about wanting to travel, to see the world beyond Texas. Penelope encouraged her, knowing that her youngest daughter needed to find her own way, just as Penelope herself had done all those years ago. In 1905, 20 years after they had started their ranch, Owen and Penelope sat on that same porch, now weathered by 2 decades of sun and wind and rain. They were in their early 40s now, older and grayer but still healthy and strong. Their children were growing into adults, and there was even talk of grandchildren on the horizon, with Theo engaged to a lovely girl from town. 20 years, Owen said, marveling at the passage of time. It seems like just yesterday we were in Seligman, and you were scrubbing floors, and I thought my heart would break seeing you like that. Sometimes I still have dreams about that time, Penelope admitted. Dreams where I am back in the saloon and none of this is real. Then I wake up and see you beside me, and I remember that this is real. This beautiful, impossible, wonderful life is real. Do you ever think about your father, about what he would think of all this? Penelope considered the question carefully. I think he would be proud. Not of the money or the success, though he would appreciate that, but of the way we built this honestly, treating people fairly, never crushing others to get ahead. That is what he tried to do before Marcus Thornton destroyed him. I hope we have redeemed his memory in some way. You have, Owen assured her. Through the way you live, the way you raise our children, the way you treat everyone with dignity and respect. Your father's true legacy lives on through you. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. 4 children, a thriving ranch, 20 years of marriage and love that had only deepened with time. It was more than either of them had ever dared to dream during those dark days in Seligman. "Owen," Penelope said softly, "do you remember what you told me that first night in the back room of the Silver Spur? You said love does not conquer all, but it gives you a reason to fight." "I remember. You were right. Love did not magically fix everything. We still had to work for this life, fight for it, build it piece by piece. But you gave me a reason to believe that there could be something better. You gave me hope when I had none left. That is what love did. It did not conquer our problems, but it gave us the strength to conquer them ourselves." Owen took her hand, the same hand that had been work roughened and raw from scrubbing floors 20 years ago. It was still strong now, still capable, but cared for and protected. "And you gave me purpose. Before I found you again, I was just drifting, working toward some vague goal of proving myself worthy of you. But when I saw you in that saloon, when I realized what you had survived, you showed me what real strength looks like. You inspired me to be a better man." "We saved each other," Penelope said simply. "That is what love is supposed to do. Not one person rescuing another, but 2 people choosing to face life together, making each other stronger." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, their children came out to join them. Theo and his fiancée, Sarah and her husband, James home from university for a visit, and Elizabeth full of plans and dreams. The porch filled with conversation and laughter, multiple generations of the family they had built. Owen looked at Penelope across the crowded porch, and she looked back at him, and in that look was everything they had been through together. The pain and the triumph, the fear and the hope, the work and the reward. They had started with nothing but love and determination, and they had built a legacy that would outlast them both. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, Owen and Penelope stood at their bedroom window, looking out over the ranch bathed in moonlight. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new work, new joys. But tonight they had this moment of peace and gratitude. "No regrets?" Owen asked, echoing the question he had asked on their 10th anniversary. "Not a single one," Penelope replied, settling into his arms. "Every hardship, every moment of pain, every struggle was worth it to get to this. To have you, to have our family, to have this life. I would do it all again in a heartbeat." Owen kissed her, a kiss that still held all the passion and promise of their wedding day. "I love you, Penelope Zephyr. I loved you when you were scrubbing floors in a saloon. I loved you when you were the timber baron's daughter, and I will love you until my last breath and beyond. And I love you, Owen Zephyr, my rescuer, my partner, my love, the cowboy who recognized me when I had forgotten who I was. Thank you for seeing me, for saving me, for building this beautiful life with me." They stood together at the window, 2 people who had found each other against all odds, who had fought for their love and won. Behind them was a past filled with both tragedy and triumph. Before them was a future bright with possibility. And in that moment, wrapped in each other's arms, they had everything they needed. The ranch continued to thrive for many more years. Theo took over the day-to-day operations when Owen decided to slow down in his 50s, and he ran it with the same integrity and skill his father had taught him. Sarah's horses became legendary throughout Texas and beyond. James established a successful law practice in Austin, but always maintained his connection to the ranch, providing legal advice and helping to expand their operations. Elizabeth eventually became a teacher, traveling throughout the West to establish schools in frontier communities, carrying forward her mother's commitment to education and opportunity. Owen and Penelope lived to see their grandchildren, and even their great-grandchildren. They grew old together on the ranch they had built, their love story becoming the stuff of family legend. The tale of how Owen had walked into a saloon in Seligman and recognized the timber baron's daughter scrubbing floors, how he had refused to let her give up, how they had fought together for justice and built a life from the ashes of tragedy. When Owen passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 73, Penelope was holding his hand. She mourned him deeply, but she did not fall apart as her mother had. Owen had taught her that grief and strength could exist together, that you could honor the past while still living fully in the present. Penelope lived another 5 years, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, still sharp and engaged with the world. She spent her final years writing down her story, wanting future generations to know where they came from, what their family had overcome. She wrote about her father's tragedy, about her time in the saloon, about Owen's recognition and rescue, about the fight for justice, and about the life they had built together. When she finally passed away at 78, it was in the house she and Owen had built, in the bed they had shared for over 50 years. Her children found her journal on her bedside table, the last entry written just days before her death. It reads simply, "I have lived a good life. I have loved and been loved. I have known tragedy and triumph, poverty and prosperity. But the greatest gift I ever received was a cowboy who walked into a saloon and saw me, truly saw me, when I had become invisible to the world and to myself. Love is not just a feeling. It is a choice made every day, in every moment, to see each other, to support each other, to build together." Owen and I made that choice every day for over 50 years, and I would not trade a single moment of it. My only regret is that I cannot have more time, but I am grateful for every second I was given. The ranch remained in the family for generations, each inheriting not just land and cattle, but the legacy of Owen and Penelope's love and integrity. The story of the timber baron's daughter who fell so far and rose so high, and the cowboy who never stopped believing in her, became a cherished part of family history, told and retold to each new generation. And in Seligman, Arizona, in the old Silver Spur saloon that had long since been converted to a general store, there was a small brass plaque on the wall that read, "In this place in 1884, Owen Zephyr recognized Penelope Patterson and changed both their lives forever." May we all be so lucky as to find someone who truly sees us. Their story was one of love and resilience, of tragedy transformed into triumph, of two people who refused to let circumstances define them. It was a story of the American West, of hard work and determination, of justice eventually prevailing, and of love that endured through every trial and grew stronger with each passing year. From the floors of a dusty saloon to the legacy of a thriving ranch, from the depths of despair to the heights of happiness, Owen and Penelope had traveled together. They had faced down corrupt businessmen and their own demons. They had built a family and a future. And they had proven that love, real love, was not about grand gestures or perfect circumstances. It was about recognition, about truly seeing another person and choosing them every single day, no matter what came. Their children and grandchildren carried forward the values they had instilled, treating others with fairness and dignity, working hard, building honestly, and never forgetting where they came from. The Zephyr Ranch became known not just for quality cattle and horses, but for the integrity of the family that ran it, a direct reflection of the love story that had founded it all those years ago in a dusty Arizona saloon, where a cowboy had recognized a girl scrubbing floors and had refused to walk away.